Okay, lastly this week we're just going to go ahead and open up a new document in InDesign, and we're going to make a quick little layout and save the files so that you guys are able to get started on your assignments this week. So when you open up your InDesign, you'll see, for you guys you won't have all of this, but this is all just projects that I've worked on and things that have been opened up in the last couple of days. So when you click on your InDesign, you have a couple of options for creating a new document or changing preferences. So up top where it says InDesign, there's a Preferences tab. So if you need to change anything in your preferences, you can do that here. We'll go over a couple of things in here. The one that I use the most is probably units and increments, but they've also made it really easy to change stuff almost immediately in your document when it's already open. So I'm just going to show you a couple of things. So preferences, units, and increments. So under your preferences, you have all these different things here. And one of the things that I'll usually change right away is I don't work in picas, I work in inches. I've just always worked in inches since I'm dealing with print mostly. So I will usually go under my units and my horizontal and vertical and change that here. So there's a couple of things in here that we can talk about. We're not going to go too much into the section interface since this is a basic class. We don't really need to go over all of the type stuff, but you can really get in here and find, all kinds of things. You can change how many words per line you want. You can pick, the maximum character width. Honestly, I've been doing this 15 years and I've almost never touched a lot of the advanced functions in here. Appearance of black, that's one that I actually have used a lot. You can see what it looks like on screen. It shows you what it means too. We'll go over this as well with colors. So it says what it looks like as 100% black, which looks like a really dark gray, and then what it looks like as a rich black. So you can actually pick what you want it to look like when it prints. I usually have all my blacks as rich black, so you get that really crisp looking dark color. Okay, so we can just start a new document. So you can either do File, New Document. We're not going to go into Book or Library right now. Or on the left-hand side, most of you guys will have the Create New option. So when that comes up, Adobe InDesign has a bunch of presets that we can kind of go over. So for me, it has recent items, but we're going to just go ahead and click on Print. So for print, there's a bunch of templates here. For my graphic design students, I'd encourage you not to use templates because it's already designed for you. I don't want to say it's plagiarism, but it's just using someone else's work. So if you're going more of the graphic design track or illustration track, it's always better to kind of make your own layouts versus using a template, because when you hit portfolio, all of those would kind of go away, especially for me. I don't prefer to have any templates in my portfolio students' work, but they are here for those of you guys that might be more of a copywriting background or things like that. So we're going to go ahead and go to Print, and you can see there's some presets here. The letter is the 8.5 by 11, so that's your basic 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. Then there's Legal, and you can see all the different sizes here. Or if you want, you can always type in whatever you need. Like I'm just going to make it kind of an off size just so you can see how you can customize it. Now I changed my preference to inches, but if it's not already changed, you can change that here in your drop down. You can choose whether you want it vertical or horizontal. You can also choose if you want multiple pages or not. I'm only going to have one page just for this quick demo. But what I'm also going to show you is you're going to want, with print, you're going to be dealing with something called bleed a lot. And bleed, I'm just going to go ahead and show you what that is. There's something called bleed and slug. So I'm going to make my bleed 0.125, and I'm going to hit tab, and it's going to apply it all the way around. Slug, I'm not going to worry about that right now. What this is if you were to put a slug on here, that would be a place where you could type out any production notes that you might want to have your pressman look at, like if you had a die cut someplace or if you had a specialty varnish. You could write notes to the printer there, and that's not necessarily a place that prints. But I'm going to leave my bleed on here, and I'm going to hit create. And I'm just going to go ahead and take you through the breakdown of what you're seeing here. Now I prefer to use my rulers, so I'm going to hit Command R because I'm just much more comfortable with my rulers here. Now if for some reason at this point you're not using inches and you want to use inches, if you come up here in the top, you can right click and you can change it here. So if you accidentally have picas, you can change it to inches, either side, right click, inches. Alright, so let's kind of break down what these lines are. So a couple of things about InDesign. If you hit W, that is your preview mode. It's going to hide all of the guides. It's going to show you the closest thing to what it would look like when it prints. Alright, so guides don't print unless you ask them to. We can override it, but we're not going to do that. So let's go over what these edges are. So let me go ahead and I'm going to just open up a window workspace and I'm going to just use Essentials Classic. There's all different kinds of workspaces you can try out. Mine's a little different than it might look on yours because it saves the last time you used it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and grab a box and I'm going to click and drag just so you can see what it does and fill it with green. Now, just to show you what these lines mean. Again, W is preview, it's going to hide it. So this black line here is the edge of your document. So that is where it would actually just print and be cut or trimmed. All right, that red line, this is really important. This is your bleed line. So if you have an image that's going off the page or you have a background or you have a color that you want to bleed off and not have a slight sliver of white if there's a printing error, that's what a bleed is for. It's to make sure that when the magazine or whatever you are designing gets cut, that the color bleeds off the edge. Alright, so when I'm asking in that first assignment that we're going to talk about after this, you want to make sure that you have a bleed on your document for aesthetic purposes. Alright, and then this one in here, this little guide here, this is your margins. So you don't want to have any really small body copy go past that line. So if you have a website or anything like that, you can see this is kind of your safe space. You don't want to have any really teeny tiny legal copy unless you want it to get possibly cut off, go past that. Okay, so again, the red line, this is what it would like if you wanted it to bleed off the top. This is where it would trim, right at that black line. And then your margins are just to make sure that you don't lose any elements off your page. Alright? So let's kind of go ahead and take a look at a couple of different things here. You have all different things that we can kind of explore here. You have your menus and your tool panels. So the control panel is actually really awesome. So let's kind of just start breaking it down piece by piece. I'm going to split the video up into 2 segments so it doesn't really go over 15 minutes. So let's just see what we can do here. Now, again, if you're not in the same preset as me, I'm in Window Workspace, Essentials Classic. Now, if you have stuff all over the place like this, because you can dock and undock things just like Photoshop and Illustrator, if it gets messed up, you can always go back to Window Workspace and reset it. And it'll fix it up for you. Okay, I'm just going to bring this over here. So anything that has, you can kind of see it has a little black bar here. That means you can drag it around, you can move it where you want. There's also the X, which means you can close it, or the double arrows, which means you can toggle between views. So this is if you want to work with it at the top, if you want to work double, or if you want to work singly. I often will work double like this just because I'm kind of used to it between demoing on my on-ground classes with a bigger screen. I actually do most of my work on a 15-inch laptop. So let's go over what a couple of these things do and break it down. So your black arrow and your white arrow tool, those of you guys that have used Illustrator before, it's exactly the same thing. So let's go ahead and grab one of these boxes down here. Now you can see there's a rectangle frame tool and a rectangle tool. The difference is the little X through it, it's preparing, if you draw this out, it's expecting you to add an image to it. You don't have to, we could always change it. Or if you use the actual rectangle tool, you can just apply a color to it. You can really do the same thing both ways. One, it's just with the extrude, it's prepared for an image to be placed inside it. So it's kind of a useless thing about InDesign, but it's there. So let's zoom in just to show you what the different tools do. Now the black arrow tool is your selection tool. So it's going to move things as a whole. So you can scale edges, see these little white squares. You can grab your edges, you can scale up and down. So this is going to be more of a general move tool. While if I click off of it and then click back with my white arrow tool, or A, for my direct select, you can grab an endpoint with the white arrow tool and have individual control of your points. So the black arrow tool, you're going to move it as a whole, and the white arrow tool, if you click on the edges, you have to click off first and then click right back on your edge. Now I can have individual control over this box, and you can do anything with it. We could fill it with text, we can put an image in it. You saw me use a color swatch over here. Okay, so these are just your general move tools. Let me just click on it and delete it. So there is a page tool, which we will not go over that yet today. That's actually one of the last things that we go over in the class. It's so you can have one document with multiple page sizes inside it. Same thing as the gap tool. It's kind of a neat tool, so I'll show it to you. If we just draw a couple of boxes. Now the neat thing about InDesign is if you can see what's happening, when I'm drawing my square out, see how the little guides show up? It's telling me, hey, this is how wide the top box is, so if you want to keep that same width. So it's really great with geometry. It keeps things nice and tight. So let's go ahead and stop there. I mean, I'm sorry, these colors are kind of bright and hideous, but just for demo. So you have this little guy called the gap tool. If you have any spaces between boxes or text boxes, that's what this is for. See how it gives you the option to hover? You can select it, and I'm just clicking and dragging, and you can say, all right, I want these all to move together, and it's really nice. It's kind of like using just a nice grid system. So if you're like, okay, I want these to be a little bit longer, and you can use that little gap tool. If you're on an older version of InDesign, it may not be there. Okay, we're not going to go over the column grids much yet. You have your type tool. So let's go ahead and just grab this. So the one thing you'll notice is, unlike Illustrator, if you just click, nothing's going to happen. With InDesign, you have to click and hold to create a box first. So again, if you click, nothing's going to happen. You have to click and hold and create a box first. And now you can see my cursor is there, and yay, we made text. Okay, there's a couple of things that we can do with the type tool in here, but not much. Mostly if I'm doing custom typography or fun stuff with vectors, I'll copy and paste them directly into InDesign, which we'll go over in this lecture still. But you can type on a path tool. It's more successful in Illustrator, so I don't even want to show you in InDesign. So we have type here. What can we do with it? So let's look at what the selection box does with type. Now what I'm using to just go and grab my page like this is the space bar. This is in all the Adobe software. So anytime you want to just not use the slide bars at the side, the scroll bars, this is just easier for me. And then I'm using Command plus and Command minus to zoom in. Just some nice shortcuts that work on all the Adobe suite. Okay, so now if we use our move tools for type, this is something that's important. All I did was make this box too small. If you make it too small, you get this little red plus that shows up. And what that's telling you is InDesign's like, hey, there's type here, and I can't see it. Which we'll get more into type management. All right, so let's modify this text. To modify the text, you just have to select it. So you can hand select it, or you can hit Command A, so you can see it's selected here. And now you have a couple of different areas that you can change it in. You have your control panel up top. So if you want to do that there, you can. So we can say, all right, it's Minion Pro. Let's just say we want to change the font here. Let's say we want to make it larger. If we want to change the leading or the space between your lines, you could do that here, but since we only have one word, we're not going to bother with that. And if you don't want to do that here, we could also open up Window, Type, and Character. And you're going to see almost the exact same thing. A lot of times you'll have the basics in the control panel, and then you'll actually have to open up the individual side panel if you want anything more, if you want more options. Like you can see here, we can make the text wider or not. And there's some extra things here if you want to make the space between your letters. So tracking. So kerning would be the space between two letters. Tracking would be across the line. Sometimes it looks bad. I mean, that looks really bad with this typeface, so I'll leave it on 0. There's also a shortcut that I use. If you select it, Shift Command, and then the brackets to the right of the M. I'll say that again. Shift Command, and then the brackets to the right of the M, the little gator brackets, that's what I call them. This is a nice little shortcut that I use often. Okay, so let's go ahead and stop here and I'll pick up in the next slide.